welcome back to the Crochet Cakes YouTube channel. This is future Clarissa introducing today's video, which is making a vest with Red Heart Granny Square yarns. In a previous video, the last video of 2023, Mom and I reviewed this Red Heart Granny Square yarn, and we teased that we were going to be working up the same type of project, meaning we were both going to create a vest with this Red Heart Granny Square yarn. And in this vlog, I'm going to walk you through all the steps that I went to create my vest with the Red Heart Granny Square yarn. Now, each ball of this yarn brings enough yarn to work up 14 granny squares. I'm gonna leave the yarn review video linked for you in the description box and in the iCard above, just in case you didn't watch it. It goes into detail on what we thought about the yarn and how you have to play around with your tension. But in this video, vlog, I'm going to share with you how I worked up my granny square to get the most perfect tension that I could. And of course, all the trials and tribulations involved with just kind of freehanding a vest that I wanted to wear for Valentine's Day. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so to work up this all-in-one granny square yarn from Red Heart, I'm using the color Hot Stuff, and as I mentioned in the previous yarn review video, I just played around using a 5mm hook and a 5.5mm hook to achieve my perfect tension, and I'm using these dots. This is an important decision for me because I was previously using the furls hooks and my tension was a bit too loose. So in order to tighten my tension just the slightest bit, I switched to the dot hooks from We Crochet. I found that the beginning color of the granny square had a lot more yarn than I needed, so I actually left a really long tail when I did my magic loop and then began working. I typically did my first round of this granny square using my 5.5mm crochet hook. This is not meant to be a tutorial on how I do granny squares, just kind of showing you how I played around to build my granny square. If you are interested in a tutorial on how I do make my granny squares, then please leave me a comment below and I will happily share that with you. You can see how many times I had to rip back and play around with my tension and my hook sizes to achieve the perfect tension, so that when I pulled through that last stitch, I was still using my color one, and when I joined in my round and pulled through, it was with the second color. Okay, so we finally got the perfect tension that when we close, we have just that little bit of color that we need to close the round. So I actually close my rounds by doing a single crochet into the first stitch, and this leaves me at the perfect place to start my corners in. The key things to take away from this segment are that you really need to play with your tension in order to be able to use the granny square yarn effectively. The other thing that I wanted to review with you guys was that the way I crochet my corners. So I like to do the half granny cluster like I showed you, and then when I'm coming back around, I like to complete that half granny cluster, but I like to close my row using a single crochet, because that is, as I said, going to set us up perfectly to work in this space. Okay, so just to recap, I used a 5.5mm crochet hook to crochet my initial round of this granny square, and the next round I used a 5mm hook, and I got a pretty good tension all around. I was able to use up the color effectively so that when I pull up a loop, I pull up the loop in the new color. That is also a key point. The other thing is that I do not chain one between each cluster, okay? And as a last little note, when I'm closing the final round of my granny square, I chain two, and then I slip stitch into that first stitch instead of using the single crochet method. So that is how I work with this Red Heart Granny Square yarn. And now it's time to actually build our vest. I'm kind of struggling with the design, to be honest. This was what I originally had in mind. So doing 9 granny squares and then somehow fitting them into a tank top type of vest, but I am realizing the flaws in this plan. So I think we're gonna have to take it back a notch and go to my handy dandy mannequin and test this out. So this doesn't strike me as too bad. We're following the same premise as when we make a rectangular garment. So we've made our rectangles here. So then now for this one, I'm going to do a half granny square, probably, and then kind of do loop up at the top here. Or I could take out this granny square. If I put this half granny square here, or like the granny triangle here, that creates more of a halter top, which is kind of cute, but not really what I'm going for. Still, I do need that half granny triangle in order to do the corners that I want, so I'm just gonna frog back and do the said triangle. If you're interested in this tutorial, then please let me know, but I can also reference some really good granny triangle tutorials here on YouTube. Okay, so idea number 1, you could do these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 full granny squares, and then do a half granny here on the side, and another half granny here, and then you'd have a halter top. Or you'd have more of a tank top look, and you come all the way to the back. I'm not really sure that's the look I want, so we're going to use 9 full granny squares for the front, and then 2 half granny triangles to shape the neck here. Blocking the squares, it is time to join them, and I want to do a visible seam, so I chose a color that I thought coordinated really well with the violet and blue tones of the Hot Stuff yarn. This, by the way, is Big Twist Value in the color Denim Blue, so it's also a 100% acrylic yarn. I'm going to be using this 5.5mm crochet hook. Now I've laid my squares flat because I want a visible join. That means that I'm going to be joining on the right side of the work. And to join, I chose to do a single crochet join, just joining yarn at the bottom of these granny squares. So I'm placing my hook in the second chain in that corner, and I'm pulling through to join my yarn. I decided to work a single crochet join, so we insert our hook in the front granny stitch and in the back granny stitch, and we just complete a single crochet. So we are essentially joining these two together by sandwiching them between a single crochet stitch. This is what the join looks like from the front, and this is what the join looks like from the back of the work. As we have 9 granny squares to join, it is time-lapse time. Once we join the granny squares vertically, we also have to join them horizontally. And then of course we have to join our granny triangles. For the back, I did 57 foundation single crochet, I believe, and then I used a tutorial from Claire of Crochet with Claire to do the granny stripe blanket, and I have a total of 18 granny square clusters for the first row, bracketed on either side by 1 double crochet stitch. I continued working granny stitches until I did 28 rows with a 5.5mm crochet hook, and then I switched to a 5mm crochet hook because I wanted to do a little bit of decreasing. Okay, so here we are for the back. I switched to a 5mm crochet hook, like I said, because I wanted to bring it in. But not only did I switch to a 5mm hook, I also did decreases. So on row 32 I did 2 granny stitch decreases, one at the beginning, one at the end. Then on row 33 I did no decreases. Then on row 34 I decreased 1 stitch in the mid back. So I did a total of 40 rows for the back because I do want the front to like kind of go a little bit back for the join. I don't want the join to be exactly at the shoulder. So I'm going to keep crocheting and meet you back for this join. So I'm going to join my work starting on the left side, and I'm going to join with single crochets. It's going to be a visible seam. The plan is to kind of take this last granny stitch or first granny stitch from our granny rectangle and use that to join the work. So since I'm going to be going left to right, I'm actually going to start the join on the 5th stitch to the inside. Okay, so here is that space between the granny squares. So I'm going to insert my hook into that first stitch, and I'm going to pull my yarn through so that I am working right to left now instead of left to right. yeah, because that's my right hand. Yeah, okay. And I'm going to single crochet. I know that you can't really see this well here, so I will pause and come back later. So it's the next day. You can probably tell I really didn't sleep much yesterday. Like, I went to sleep today, technically at 3 in the morning. But I wanted to clarify what I was trying to show yesterday in terms of how I'm joining the little bit of shoulder that we have and then working the neckline. So on the left shoulder, I joined my yarn to that first granny stitch from the last cluster. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And what I did was that I joined to the granny stitch, but then as I was coming down, I also joined into the post of that last double crochet because I wanted my work to fold to the back. And then I started going around my front for my neckline, doing some decreases because my neckline was very, very wide. And I came up and did the same number of decreases as I did for the left side. Now we're going to join the right side of the work together, and I am using a 5mm crochet hook for all this portion because I wanted our neckline to come in a bit, as I said. Doing all this join on the right side of the work. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually treat the post as if it were a stitch, and that kind of forces my top stitch to face inward towards the neckline rather than outward towards the shoulder. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this is where I'm going to start my join. So I'm going to insert my hook into the base of the double crochet post, and I'm going to insert the hook into the 5th stitch at the back of the work. And I'm going to yarn over, pull through, yarn over, complete my single crochet. Then at the top of the stitch, I'm going to insert my hook and then insert it at the 4th stitch in the back. And I'm going to insert my hook into the next stitch in the front and then the corresponding stitch in the back, and continue doing my single crochets. By doing this, as I said, I'm folding my work just a little bit towards the neckline so that our vest doesn't fall off the shoulder completely. And there I've joined my 5 stitches, my 5 double crochets. Okay, time for a fit check. So laying that on, and we see what I said about curving in. Also what helped our neckline curve in was that for the back, we did those decreases. It brought it all in nicely. I think what I'm gonna do is keep decreasing on the neckline. I think I'm gonna do this next round, no decreases, because we need a rest round. And then for the next round of the neckline, I'm gonna do some decreases, and then I'm gonna do a knit rib. In order to continue working on the neckline, I'm gonna cut our yarn right here at the right shoulder, because now I'm going to need to head back to the middle of the neckline to do my granny stitches around. So I'm going to start at the mid back of the neckline, and I'm going to do a rest round. Like I said, not going to be doing any decreases. How I like to start my granny stitches is insert my hook into the middle where you would normally work, and then I'm going to chain 1 to attach my yarn, and then I'm going to be doing a stacked single crochet. Okay, and I start with that stacked single crochet, and then I just move on to do my next granny stitch, because when we come back, that's when I'm going to complete my first initial granny cluster. This technique, I discussed it when we did the granny stitch raglan sweater, so you can check it out there in more details. So now that we're on that join of the neckline, we know from the front panel and the back panel, I'm going to be working a decrease because I want to be minimize this gap, and I actually don't want to increase my stitch count. So this is how I do my decrease. I do a double crochet, and then I start doing another double crochet, but I don't finish it in this space. Instead, I yarn over and I go to my next space, and I work the beginning of a double crochet, and then I yarn over and I pull through those 3 loops. So that is a decrease. Like, that's a normal double crochet decrease, but then we complete our granny cluster, and it's going to look something like this. This is our decrease at the neckline. And like I said, this is just to minimize the gap between the join of the front and the back panel. All right, so now we can just keep crocheting along. After completing the neckline, it was time to finally join the sides of our work, but I'm actually this time going to be doing the join on the inside. So I'm going to fold my panels so that they are right sides facing, and then I'm going to just use a single crochet to join, leaving about a 9-inch gap for my armhole. So this means I'm joining a single crochet around the posts and then the actual stitch. Okay, so this is what we have until now. Finished neckline. I did some short row shaping for the back before I started my knit rib, joined my sides, and this is where our armhole is at. I think the 9 inches is too short of an armhole for this chunky sweater, so I'm gonna go down to this join here, make it about 10 inches of a join, you know, give or take. But anyway, now it's time for me to leave you guys here and come back when I've actually finished all that needs to be done for this sweater. After completing both armholes, it's time to work on the bottom rib, and for this I literally just worked granny stitches all around the bottom. This time I used the 5.5mm crochet hook because I didn't want to bring in the vest. And with that, it's time for the reveal. Well, we're gonna wash it and then lay it flat to dry, but it's time for the reveal. Well, what do you think? We have completed a Valentine's Day vest in, I would say, a pretty timely manner. If I had dedicated like 100% of my time to this, it would have been done way faster. But of course, I was working on this between other projects and other makes. So to wrap this up, what did I like? What didn't I like? I liked working with the yarn insofar that I didn't have to think about the color changes. The colors coordinated very well together and they took care of that for me. I didn't have to think outside the box for it. It was lovely. What I didn't like about the yarn was that you get a very fixed size of square. So you get, you know, a 6x6 square. I almost wish they would offer the same type of yarn in like a 4x4 square, and that way you could play around with the fit of these squares. As you saw, I didn't really follow 100% the intended use of the yarn because I did make these half granny triangles. Spoiler alert, no, you did not use half the yarn to create the half triangle. I used quite a bit of the yarn. Other things that I really liked about how this turned out was the neckline. At first, I was super unsure about how the neckline was going to work, how the fit was going to work, how I was going to join it in a way that would please me, because I didn't really want to do a literal half rectangle of a granny square. I didn't want to do that. I could have done it, but I didn't like how it would fit across here. It would have needed to be more of a trapezoid granny than a rectangle or a square. But I am super happy with how the neckline turned out, how it all played really well together, and how attaching this in the back a little bit lower kind of brought in this rectangle a little bit. Things that I think could go better. I should have listened to my gut and done three smaller rectangles for the sides so that, let me get up, so that we would have more space here. I think this has a great potential to be a oversized granny square vest, and I should have kind of stuck with that and made 2 or 3 more granny squares for the sides. Well, actually, you know, it would have been a total of 6 granny squares for the sides, right? Because 3 on each side. But again, I would have liked those to be maybe 4 rounds, which I could have achieved just deciding which colors I was going to use and which colors I was going to leave out. I really like how the knitting played around with the crochet. I really like the fact that I ripped this back and did longer armholes. Things the camera caught me off because it ran out of storage. Where was I? Things that I think could go better. the length. I'm not too crazy about the length for this. I think it was great if it was like an oversized sweater vest. Perfection, honestly. And I guess I could turn it into an oversized sweater vest. All I'd have to do is rip back the sides and add those smaller granny squares, but I'm not too inclined to do that at the moment. The other thing that I think could have gone a little bit better was the rib, the knit rib on the neckline. I think I made it I used too many stitches. I had no reason to add the 6 extra stitches that I added when I picked up my loops to knit with. Typically when you add knitting to crochet, you do pick up extra loops because knit stitches are smaller than crochet stitches. But in this case, having had such a wide neckline and having done the short row shaping in the back to elongate the back of the neck, I feel that I really didn't need those extra 6 stitches, and I actually could have possibly used a smaller knitting needle because I feel that it sits a little awkwardly on the neck. Overall, I am very pleased with this. I have no complaints. It was a fun project. It was just fun to try and math this out myself, and I also had a lot of fun creating the accessories for this Valentine's Day vest, namely these granny heart earrings, very in theme with the granny square vest, the granny heart earrings, and also these felted hearts, which are just absolutely adorable. Yeah, these were both designs by my mom, actually, Mine and Muse Crafts, so I will leave the link to that down below if you kind of want to make some for Valentine's Day. The felt hearts in particular, I think would make great gifts, great decorations, coasters, you know, they're just beautiful. I love them. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me in crocheting this vest for Valentine's Day. I hope that you enjoyed the video, found it instructional. Do let me know if you've made granny square vests before. I know there are an abundance of patterns and very gorgeous indeed. But let me know which ones of them have you tried. Again, thank you for joining me today, and I want to wish you a very, very happy crafting. If you like the content, then consider subscribing to the channel, giving it a like, and sticking around because next week we are going to be practicing our V-stitch increases.